Let me give you a quick explanation of what's under the hood. Everything you see here is bundled into a single VM. And I know that might be confusing because there's a word here that says server, but it's a subcomponent or a service on the system. I'll get to that in a little bit. But for the Indeni platform to work for you, we have a component called the collector, which is responsible for ingesting all the data that it collects because it autonomously runs CLI commands and API queries. It's autonomous thanks to the Indeni knowledge, which we'll get there in a little bit. The next component is the Indeni server. Now that acts as a brain. All this data that is ingested, thanks to the collector, is now being analyzed to determine if there's any operational risks or any leading indicators of potential of issues that can become bigger, or maybe just best practices that you need to be notified on. Now, all of this is thanks to the Indeni knowledge, which in my opinion is the lifeblood of the Indeni platform. This is a repository of automation scripts that come out of the box and determines what kind of data to ingest and identify issues on. This can actually be viewed on our website or in the product itself. Now, the Indeni knowledge can be developed through two different ways. We have something called the Indeni Insight, which basically gives us aggregated, anonymized data from our end users, determining what issues or what use cases occur based on the context of the device. That's a lot of words in one sentence, but essentially it collects information to tell us that, for example, Palo Alto, a panorama running PanOS 7.9 or 7.5 or 7.11 has certain types of issues, whereas running on 8.1 has improved based on the statistics that we've collected. We get this anonymized data and aggregate it so that we can determine that based on the certain models or the versions, that we should focus on certain use cases, which is whether it's system degradation, compliance, best practices, misconfigurations. We'll get there in a little bit. We'll talk about those use cases. But the insight guides us to help understand what are the most challenging issues to date based on those the device's context. Now, the next component is really the focal point of this webinar. It's really the perks of crowdsourcing knowledge. The Indeni Crowd is essentially a forum where you can join today, right now as we speak. In fact, there will be a sign-up link at the end. But anyone can join, ask a question, regardless of what vendor they're working on or working with. And somewhere out there will be a knowledge expert, just like Brad here, who would be able to help answer any questions you might have. It's a lot easier than going to the vendor support pages yourself sometimes, because it can be challenging to navigate through all these different knowledge articles and understanding what might be pertinent to your infrastructure and what your problems you're facing. What we've seen is also that the questions that really stick out are then turned into these issues that we should be tracking, or I should say, Indeni knowledge that we should be adding into the platform. So over time in this community, we're getting a lot of these interesting questions. We get knowledge experts like Brad here to help out. And here and there, we notice that there's certain issues that are very unique and are challenging to analyze other than going through a manual process, that we could turn around, automate that whole process, and leverage a platform like Indeni to proactively track these operational risks or best practices for you.